Hello, everyone. Welcome to VizConnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor, part of customer success team at Tableau, and welcome back to VizConnect after a great conference. I am sure if you have attended the conference in person or virtual, I think you are able to go ahead and take away some great upcoming features in our product, connect to the Tableau community, and also learn from each and every one, right, in terms of some of the best practices. So with that, let me just go ahead and introduce our speaker for today. I think it's an honor to have Jared Flores. Jared is a senior consultant at Analytic Vision. He joined Tableau Public in December 2020 and participates in community initiatives such as prepping data. He creates business style dashboard and is a big advocate for Tableau Prep, having recently undergone a challenge to complete 100 days of prepping data. He was also voted as Prep Star for the 2020 Vizzies. The Data Fam has helped him find his voice and inspired him to launch his YouTube channel to teach others how to use Tableau Prep in a series called Put Some Prep in Your Step. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Jared to talk about Tableau Prep templates. Jared, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here, and always glad to talk about Tableau Prep. So recently, I, with Tableau conference, and this was my first in-person Tableau conference, and getting to meet everybody. It was really good to just exchange ideas with people, talk about what they were doing and different projects, and just be able to peek into the strategies of everybody. And especially with Iron Viz, it's always exciting to watch. And the Vizes that were presented this year were really amazing. A lot of creative stuff happening. And, you know, a couple of days after the conference, CJ Mays, one of the contestants, released a blog sort of outlining how he created his dashboard. And one of the things that he did was he used Tableau Prep to create the violin plots. And uh, whenever I had submitted my entry to IronViz, I had also used Tableau Prep pretty heavily to create some of the charts in there. And so this got me thinking that, you see a lot of tutorials, blog posts on how to create charts like Sankey's or sigmoids, a lot of the curved lines, and then these plots, radar plots, like things that aren't natural to Tableau that you have to do a little bit of data preparation or densification to achieve. There's plenty of that content out there that sort of uh, there's the calculations are outlined, like how the charts themselves are built, but they usually require the data to be in a very specific structure. And prep is the perfect tool to really solve this. And so that's why I started the Tableau Prep templates, because uh, this is something that you can use to actually take your real world data and get it into that format that you need to plug it into a lot of these templates. Um, and so I started talking to uh, Kevin Flurledge, and he, in turn, talked to Ken Flurledge. And so basically, the idea I presented them with was, y'all have already done the work of creating these workbooks. Uh, I want to go and basically just do the prep work and create some templates that we structure the data to fit in your workbook. And then it's really just even simpler plug and play. Because a lot of the time, what you would have to do is whatever data set you're working with, especially if it's like a real world business data set, you'd have to export it and then find a way to aggregate it and get it into that structure to plug into the Excel sheet, and uh, then plug it into the workbook, and then it'll work right. So I'm going to share my screen here. And so, again, I got the idea again because of what CJ had done and how I had done in my Iron Viz. And so this flow that you're seeing here, and I'll zoom out just a little bit. This was the flow that I had put together for my Iron Viz submission originally. And I used Prep at first because the data set that I was using was Spotify data. And so it does come out a little bit messy. There was some duplicates in there that I was trying to clean up. And then as I started really coming up with what I wanted the design to be, I ended up using some pedal charts, and then I ended up using a rain cloud plot, which is essentially half of a violin plot. And so I figured that I could really handle all of that data preparation, densification, and restructuring in prep, and it simplified my overall design process. And so you can see right here in the middle, there's these two outputs, pedals by album and pedals by track. And so this is where I was sort of handling all of that restructuring. And then here, there is an output for the rain cloud plot. And when I saw CJ's walkthrough and how he had put it together in prep, again, I really felt like there was a need here to make these templates a little bit more accessible by creating this resource. And so, you know, whenever I had finished outputting my Iron Viz again, so those templates that I used, uh, I was restructuring the data so I could get this pedal chart, and then restructuring it so I could get this half of a violin plot. So what CJ really did was basically took this and did the full violin. In mine, I did a half violin. And so uh, the first thing that I had sort of identified was, let me find a couple of charts that maybe I've used, some of these templates that I've used in the past, and try to figure out what's going on in the workbook and recreate that in prep. And so I think it was maybe it was last week, maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I released the first one, and it was for the sigmoid bump chart. And so that's the uh, Sankey curvy bump chart. And so if I bring this up real quick, here we go. And so this was the original post from the Fleur-Luche twins. So it was this curvy bump chart, and this is something that I had used in the past. And so what I was doing was really trying to understand this data prep Excel template, because these workbooks, they really do a lot of the work for you. It's just this initial step of getting the data into this structure. And so when I started it with this first one, what I was really doing was just mimicking what was happening inside of the workbook itself. So inside of the workbook, what happens with a lot of these templates is they take this Excel sheet that's structured a specific way, and then there's usually a sheet that has some values from 1 to 49 or 1 to 100, or if you're doing something circular, from 1 to 360. And then that's joined in the workbook to do a lot of that densification and get your data to have each of the points necessary to create those curved lines in Tableau. And so I saw this not only as an opportunity to create a lot of that work in prep, but also to help understand exactly what's happening when those with those data structures. And so this will, it'll help you increase your knowledge of why this data needs to be structured this way, why it needs to be joined this way, and what's really happening in the background. And then, of course, in all of these blogs for a lot of these templates, they walk through the calculations and why they're doing certain calculations. And so I'm not doing this to sort of rehash what they've already done. And you'll see in my blog posts and in my videos, I'm really directing the reader back to those original posts to get all of those details. My purpose really is to just understand this data structure side of it. And even just in the very short time since this has started, I've already sort of changed my approach to this because I'm really starting to understand what this needs to look like to be most useful. And so with my first one here, you can see that I had this entry sheet here. And so this entry sheet, you see dimension, time, rank, measure, actual time. And so this really is still this Excel sheet. It's just the flow here is handling that work. So there's some things that I do in the prep flow to sort of mimic the formulas that were in the Excel sheet. So for example, in here, I'm creating a rank. In the Excel sheet, when you fill it out, or in the original Excel sheet, when you are filling out your data, what you want those values to be, you sort of have the option to where if you already know the rank, you can fill out that rank. But if you don't know the rank, but you have the measure, then you can fill the measure out and it will give a rank. It will automatically rank it with a formula. And so that's what this step is doing. It's mimicking that formula to either assume the rank value if you've entered it into the sheet or fill it in based off of a measure that you've entered. And then there's some more columns being created. Again, this is just mimicking the functionality of that template in the Excel workbook. And so this was my first pass, sort of what I thought these templates needed to look like, basically, but it was still sort of requiring you to go in and make this, fill out this sheet. And so it was really solving half the problem. And again, I think this one came out last Monday or something like that. And so even just since then, I've sort of changed my understanding of how can I really enable people who are using real data sets to tackle this part, right? Because even though prep is useful for, generating some of the densification and joining it and really getting that overall output to look how I need it to look, how can I solve this problem of getting it into that initial step? And so I think the first two that you'll see, the sigmoid bump chart and the coxcomb chart, fit this format where you still have to kind of go in and fill out that initial sheet that you're connecting to, and then it does the rest for you. I've got one coming out next week, which would be the arc Sankey. And so this one tries to do a little bit more in that now we're introducing the concept of taking some of those calculations that do exist in the workbook and pushing them here to prep. But then in the one that I did most recently, that'll come out in about 2 weeks, this is where I'm now understanding how to really solve that problem. And so let me open up the other one. So in this one, and it'll have an error, but just ignore that. In this one, this is where I started to figure out how to truly solve it to where it becomes more plug and play. And so the data that I'm connecting to here is really just the sample superstore data set. So it's not structured in any specific way. Now, granted, the sample superstore data set is a lot cleaner than what you typically have to work with, but it's the same concept of we're working with a row level data set, and I want that to be my input. I don't want to have to fill anything out a certain way. I want prep to really be the power behind it and get it into that structure, and then all I have to do is just output it, plug it into the workbook, and it works great. So I'm changing my approach because originally I wanted it to really just be you fill out your template like you're used to, but prep does a lot of the restructuring. And now I'm starting to see that if you, even with a minimal understanding of prep, right, just understanding how to include and exclude certain fields, and then also just doing some simple renaming, then prep really can do a lot more. And this also allows you to use it in a lot more cases because you don't have to have You're not having to do a whole bunch of external work. And so in my blog posts, what I'm doing is sort of outlining the prep template and how it works. And then in my videos, I'm outlining how I'm building the prep flows and why I'm building them. And so the reason why I'm doing both of those is, again, because I think it's important to understand just prep in general, data preparation in general. And then the more that you go through and understand how to build different data structures with it, you can apply it to other cases. Like, I'm sure you're not going to be building prep flows all the time to do Sankey's, but if you understand the methods that are going into it, you can still apply those methods to other data structures, and cleaning techniques. So that's what this is evolving into. And again, we're still in the early stages of it, and I'm as I get more feedback, I'm sure some of it will change. But even just since we started to today, um, I think it's already improved quite a bit. And I've also found that it's not just something that can be used uh, to create, Tableau public visuals. I was talking to a client the other day, and they had reached out to me because they wanted to create a multi-level Sankey, and they had asked me if I had ever done one before. So we jumped on a call and we were walking through it, and it was sort of that same problem of, uh, it's great that the template's here, but I don't have my data in this structure, and I don't know how to get it in this structure. And so that's when that sort of light bulb clicked, that like the prep templates that I had already built are doing a great job of helping understand what's happening, but they're still not solving that initial problem. And so that's why um, I've changed it. Once this spaced donut chart comes out, then moving forward from those, they'll start solving that problem of really just plugging your data set in and prep doing the heavy lifting. So um, another good thing about this is that because the positive there was a really um, good positive reception to the idea in the first place, and so that sort of prompted me to reach out to more people, and just to ask. There's a lot of people in the community that have done really great work in building out these workbook templates, uh, and so I know that this can be a really good resource to make those visuals more accessible in business dashboards. Um, Also, obviously with the caveat that you don't want to just do it because it looks cool. You have to have a purpose for it and a reason for it. And if it's helping communicate your message, then that's great. Obviously it's not going to be in every single dashboard, but when you do need to use it and maybe you're creating a static dashboard for a very specific presentation, and um, some of these charts, the aesthetic fits that presentation. It's going to engage your audience, and you're going to be walking through that with them to help them understand the visuals and communicate that message. Then this resource will just help to make those more accessible. They'll help make sure that when you are restructuring that data or pre-aggregating it, that it's going to be more accurate, that it's going to, it's not going to be as much of a headache to achieve that. And it won't, the few times that I have done some of these templates in a business setting, I sometimes feel like it's a little more hacky than it's intended to be, because of I'm having to pull that data out and do things to it. And then I can't, if I have to update something, then I have to do more work in making sure that I pull down a new data set and restructure the new data set. Uh, so the hope here is that you can take these prep templates, uh, and really not only use these vises more, but also, again, really understand what is happening with the data. Why does it need to be densified? What's actually happening when it's densified? And I try to explain that as I go through, in creating some of these and in the documentation for some of these. So you'll notice, like, I do these scaffolds a lot, and my join steps, if I am doing densification, that's actually what I call it. And then again, I try to write out in the description exactly what that's doing. So um, that's the idea behind the prep templates. And I feel I feel like I've been talking for a long time. And so I do want to pause for a second and see if there are any questions off the bat or any questions so far about these templates.
Hey Jared, there is one question about if is it possible to share the flow?
So the flows, the way that I'm doing it is I'm putting all of these in a Google Drive, and so as I release them, I'm right now the cadence is about one a week, and so as I release them in the blog post and in the video, there's a link to the Google Drive that has the flow pre-built out. And so if you want to go that way and just use the one that's pre-built, the blog walks you through how you plug your data into it and get it to work in the workbook. But if you want to understand how it's built or you want to build it yourself so you gain that skill set, that's what the video helps you do. But yeah, the flow, the pre-built flow, there's some data templates as well. And like in the case of this space donut chart, there's also a workbook. All of that is put in a Google Drive that you can go in and download.
Perfect. Thank you, Jared. I think there are no other questions. I think they're asking blog post for your, and that is something I will just go ahead and put it in the chat. That should not be a problem.
Yep. But yeah, so again, when I started, let me go back to this one. So like I said, I had put this Excel sheet, and that was something that I was still sort of maintaining on the reader because we're so used to seeing these templates function in this way. I still see vizzes all the time with them. And so to me, that says that people do understand how to fill them out a certain way. And so that's what this original one was. You fill out your data sheet, but then the flow here, what I'm also trying to do with these as well is simplify how many inputs you need, because in some of these original templates, you've got your data sheet, like I said, and you've got your model sheet. And in some of them, like the ArcSync, you've got 4 inputs in the ArcSync because of the way that you need to restructure the data. And so there are some cases where I'm simplifying how many sheets you actually have to work with, because Prep can generate a lot of that for you. One of my favorite things to do inside of Prep, you'll see this series of steps here. It usually starts with a step called scaffold range. You'll probably see this in almost every single one of the Prep templates, since they do require some form of densification. And I think it's just really, it to me, restructuring data is so interesting. And then the way that tools like this, like Tableau Prep, work, it's just, it's such a cool thing to me that you can generate something almost from nothing. Like when you look at this data set, right? If I take a preview at it, I've got some rows here. They've got, what is this? I've got 12 rows here, right? But when I'm generating that model sheet, I'm really sort of just taking my understanding of that data structure and my understanding of how these steps and prep are working to generate a data set that doesn't exist. So what I mean by that is, in this scaffold range, what I typically do is I create a start and an end value. And so for this particular sigmoid bump chart, you need 49 points to generate that curve in Tableau. And so I could have, just like the original template does, I could just have a Excel sheet that has 49 rows in it, and each row has a point of 1 through 49. But I also want this to be something that's reusable, repeatable, and if I ever needed to change it for whatever reason, I can do that within my flow rather than having to open up Excel, edit the Excel sheet, and then re-input that. And so what I can do here is, again, I create my two start point, or my start and my end point, and then I keep only those fields. So for example, if I go back to my start step, so here you can see I generated a start, I generated an end, and then I removed all of the other fields. Now, because I'm generating a static value field, it generates that value for every row in my data set, but I don't want these values to be repeated. I just need one row with these values. And so the aggregate step is handy in that your aggregate step can deduplicate your data depending on how you group it. And so when you bring values into your grouped fields or bring columns into your grouped fields, what that's going to do is that's going to return each unique combination of values with that grouping. And since I only have one unique combination of values, I only get one row back. And so that's what I really wanted. I really wanted a one row with a value of 1 and a value of 49. Again, here I'm just taking my understanding of the data structure, and I know what I really need to end up with is a table with 49 rows, and each row needs to have a value going from 1 to 49. And so what I do here is I pivot that into one column. And so now my column has, now it's just one column with a value of 1 and a value of 49. And then here I can use the new rows step, very handy step, and generate those values from 1 to 49. And so this sheet now mimics the structure of the Excel sheet that had these values. And so, yeah, like I said, I mean, I could bring in an Excel sheet. I could fill it out if I know how I need it, fill it out and bring it in here. But what this allows me to do is I can save this series of steps. I can copy and save it, and I can insert it into any other flow that I'm doing the specification with. And typically all I really need to do is just change the start and end values to give me what I want. Like when I did the space donut chart in this one, all I did was come in and change those values from 1 to 360. And my scaffold generates me those 360 points, and I get my space donut chart. And so, again, the more that you do this, the more that you work with prep, the more that you start to understand, you start to think differently. And that's why I really love prep, is because it's changed the way I think about data structures. It's changed the way that I approach data visualization. And now typically when I'm approached with a data problem, I start thinking in terms of prep. What does this data set need to look like in order for me to do what I needed to do with it? And how can I get it there? And how much of that can I handle in prep versus desktop? Because I don't want to do, or there are some cases where I can't do everything in prep because a lot of the power of desktop comes in the way that it aggregates the data. So I don't want to over aggregate my data and make it to where Tableau Prep can't do what it's best at, but I want to handle as much of it as possible here. So that way my workbook is as performant as possible. So I do encourage, if you start looking at the prep templates, I encourage going through the pre-built ones just to get an understanding of how they're restructuring that data. But then I also encourage the build videos because that's where the real understanding of things will start to click. And then again, you may move from downloading the pre-built ones and plugging in to really understanding how to build your own. And then you'll even be able to take some of the ones that are pre-built and just make some slight modifications to make them do a whole host of other things. Because if you look at the 4 that I've got built out so far, so here is the sigmoid bump chart. And then if we look at the arc Sankey, and then if we look at the space donut, the overall structure of them is pretty similar. You'll see a lot of the same stuff happening. Again, you'll see these 4 steps in almost every single one of them. And then this densify and redensify, you'll see this in a lot of them. And so you can just take these series of steps and your understanding of them and just modify them a little bit to do what you really want them to do if you have a different purpose for them. And so I'm hoping this grows into a really nice resource. I'm hoping, like I said, so far I've gotten blessings from the Flurlich twins. I've gotten blessings from Tuan Huang. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there who do Viz templates that I'll probably reach out to again grow this into an even bigger resource that people can use. And like I said, it's not just solving the problem for passion projects and Tableau public visualizations. It's also solving problems to make the real world data more usable in these types of scenarios. So yeah, that is prep templates. Are there any other questions?
So, Jared, I think Jeffrey is asking, do you add 1 to 49 even if those values are in data? I think you were doing some data manipulation. So he's asking on that over here. And also the follow-up question is, what is not numeric data, like character values?
So if your values are already in your data set, then you probably wouldn't need to do any of that, but that's usually not the case. So like when we're looking at the sigmoid bump chart and I'm doing that 1 through 49, that's because in the original template, if I pull that up, let me find it real quick. So pull this up. So here's the original template, right? This is the one that Ken published. And so you'll see 3 sheets. We've got entry sheet, data template, and join data. And so this join data sheet is what I'm recreating in prep. And so this is where those values of 1 through 49 are coming from. And so like I was saying earlier, I could just take this sheet and add that as an input step. So I could remove these 4 steps if I wanted to, and just use that join data sheet to join to my flow here. The reason why I did this inside of prep and generated those values inside of prep is, again, so that way I can take this series of step and reuse it inside of my prep flow. If I need to make adjustments to it, I can do it inside of my prep flow instead of having to modify this sheet, save it, and then use that as a new input or update that input. It's functioning the same way. I'm just keeping as much work as I can inside of the flow instead of having to adjust multiple inputs. And then for character values, there's some work that you can do if you did need to modify your data set, expand it based on character values. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. I know there's a couple of prep and data challenges that handle that task specifically. I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to. I'd want to make sure that I explain it the right way. But just in general, if you did need to do it with character values, there's ways that you can modify your data to extract character values and then do them in a specific order. And so again, these are just other ways that you can use prep. And if you understand data structures, if you understand typical steps that are taken to modify the data, then that makes tasks like that a little bit easier.
Thank you, Jared, for that. So if you have any questions for Jared, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Happy to ask him. I think in the meantime, Jared, I think I can go ahead and take the liberty to ask you one question about how did you get started with Tableau, right? And what was your passion specifically for Tableau Prep?
So with Tableau, and with data in general, so I began my career actually working in a warehouse. And what our process was, our like inventory receiving process was, we had an inventory system, but it was really slow. And so typically to speed up things and make sure that we could receive everything in time, we had these laptops and we would run around the warehouse and scan items into an Excel sheet and then take those and copy and paste it into our desk. That way we weren't like bringing stuff to our desk, scanning it. And so we were trying to find a way to speed up that process. And the more that I did that and scanned stuff into this Excel and then copied and pasted, I started thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a faster way, and there's got to be a way that we can automate some of this because it's such a repeated process. And at the time, I didn't know much about, I mean, I had a very base knowledge of Excel. And so I started reading some books and looking into VBA. And so I started building some tools with VBA and Excel to automate some of these processes and plug it into our system. And because of that, my boss at the time had a very SQL heavy background and saw sort of what I was doing and basically said, I see the spark, I see the interest there, and I want to take that and help shape that. And so we started building an inventory tracking tool, like an auditing tool inside of Microsoft Access. And so that's where I started picking up SQL. And so I was combining SQL with VBA to create this auditing tool. And then once we had it built out and we were able to scan stuff, then now we needed to generate reporting out of it and understand what was our typical audit percentage, who was doing the scans, where stuff was going missing from, like just general reporting based off our audits. And so that's what really introduced me to Tableau and data visualization, is to understand those inventory reports. And once I jumped into Tableau, it sort of changed my entire career. At the time when I was introduced to it, I was managing data centers, and within a year, I had changed positions to become a data analyst and just shift my career into focusing on the data. And then I think it was about 3 years into my journey with Tableau that I had become, I spent as much time as I could absorbing blogs, increasing my knowledge inside of Tableau, and I had gotten to a position where I was managing a BI team, and we had a very specific problem we were trying to solve. We had a data engineering team that had structured data sets in a very specific way that if you just tried to plug it into Tableau, it was not going to give you accurate data because there was a lot of duplication happening. And at the time, I had used Tableau Prep previously, like around the time that it originally came out. And so I thought maybe Tableau Prep can solve my problem here because my team didn't have access to the data sets. We only had access to the actual published data sources on Tableau. And so with Tableau Prep, I was able to to connect to those published data sources and restructure them and modify them in the way that I needed. And so that was where I first started becoming reacclimated with Tableau Prep. And then one of the first things I noticed when I was actually able to plug into those data sources was how wrong our reporting was, because we didn't have that understanding of the data. We hadn't actually been able to take a look at it at that level, at that row level, and truly understand what was happening with it. And so once I saw that, that just opened up to my mind even more to how important it was to utilize a tool like this to truly understand my data structure before I do anything else with it. And as I was learning it and learning how to profile my data with it, I really saw that there was not a bunch of resources on learning it. You know, there was Carl Alchin's Prep Up and Running book, and there was Prep and Data along with their blog. But that was really it. Aside from a couple of blog posts here and there, like very specific ones, there wasn't much else to really help someone who was trying to get on their feet with prep. And so that's why I started really diving in, trying to understand it more, and creating the YouTube channel, because I feel like the more that I use it, the more that I really continue to believe that it's very important that everybody that works with data, that not necessarily that they have to use Tableau Prep, but that they do need to truly have an understanding of what their data looks like, how it's structured, and why it's structured that way. Because if you don't have that real understanding of your data set, you could still take it and visualize it in Tableau and do great work and get insights from it. But it's just so much easier, and you feel more confident about the analysis that you're doing if you really have that understanding of the base data set. And so that's everything from these templates to all of the videos. It's to just increase that awareness of the power of prep and just help people who are trying to jump into it have a resource. You know, again, there's the prep and data challenges, which are fantastic. You know, I did my 100-day challenge, and I learned so much throughout that time. So I continue to encourage people to do those challenges. But this is just another resource that takes you outside of the challenge mindset, and it's just, I just want to learn concepts and things like that, or take a deeper dive into building and why they're built this way. So yeah, that's why I've become so interested in Tableau Prep, just because the more I use it, the more I see the power of it, the more development work that they do on it. All of these new features just make it better and better. And so yeah, that's why I love it.
Yeah, I think that this is such an inspiration for all of us, right? I think in terms of how we should go ahead and adopt the tool. And thank you for motivating everyone how we can go ahead and take our journey to the next level. So I think my last question to you, Jared, is what will be your advice to someone who's just starting new with Tableau and community?
I would say jump in as soon as you can. Jump into the community as soon as you can. When I first got involved with the community, I was already pretty heavy into my Tableau journey, and I can measure how drastically my ability to work within Tableau has changed ever since I joined the community. It's truly, the community has changed my career. It's changed my life. I got a new job because of people I met in the community. I've gotten a better understanding, as well as like how I can contribute. And it's, if you're new in this career as well, if you're new to data, and you really just don't know what step you should take, what direction you want to take, the work that you see in the community will help inspire you. But also if you just reach out to people, that they're so responsive, they're so generous with their time and their knowledge, and they can help give you that confidence that you need in your role, and also just help give you that confidence in what you really want to do, because there's so many different roles in the world of data. Like I said, like I started with data visualization, and I think in recent time, most of the work that I have been doing has been more in the realm of data engineering. And I love them both. Some people prefer visualization, some people prefer engineering, but you don't really know which one is your sweet spot until you really get exposure to it. And the community helps with that. And there's so many challenges. Just yeah, that would be my advice. Just jump in and ask questions, and put your work out there, because taking feedback can be challenging, uh, because you don't want to ever hear anything, any criticisms about your work. But the community has done a really good job of being very positive about those critiques, and doing it in a way that's going to help you get better. So yeah, just put yourself out there, and don't be afraid to, because uh, you know most of the community, the vast majority of the community, is very generous in how they will respond to your work.
Perfect. I think with that, thanks a lot, Jared, for all your inspiration and motivation for us, for everyone to go ahead and get started with Tableau and community. And also, we are excited for this Tableau Prep templates. I think I'm looking forward how we can go ahead and leverage it in terms of creating these charts, which we have to struggle a lot right now in terms of going ahead and manipulating with data.
Yeah, and so that's, like I said, I also hope as more people start to use them, that they do, if you use them, communicate with me and let me know how I can make them better, because my goal with the pre-built ones, again, is for you to just be able to plug in your data set, maybe do some renaming of columns and some like including of columns, but the rest of the work to be handled by prep. And so I know that with my very first one, um, there's still a little bit of data preparation work to be done outside of prep. But like I said, as we go, they're going to just continue to get better, and more feedback I get, the better and better and better that they will become.
Awesome. Yep. I think we will all go ahead and give it a try. I think that's a shout out to everyone. Just go ahead, try out these templates and reach out to Jared in terms of how you can go ahead and make it more impactful.
Yep.
Perfect. I think with that, thanks a lot, everyone, for joining the session. Thank you, Jared. I think keep inspiring us, and we will look forward to more templates from you on Tableau Prep.
Awesome. I will continue to generate them, and I thank you everybody for listening to me, and I hope I didn't bore anybody. But yeah, I can't wait to see the work that y'all do with these templates.